I'm Bill Seng, and I've been doing this series on YouTube on creationism. And one of the posts that I previously made was regarding the TV series Cosmos, a space-time odyssey, featuring Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I particularly made note of his involvement in Carl Sagan and his opinions of Carl Sagan. Well, today I'd like to get back into the Cosmos. I've fallen way behind with watching the Cosmos series, but I still found it necessary to comment on it. I went through and I watched some bits and pieces of it the other night, and to try to give myself a better understanding of what all has taken place since last time I had watched an episode of it, and it just became just horribly painful watching it. And I know that some of you out there might think it's because, well, your mind just can't grasp it. You're a creationist, so how is you supposed to be able to grasp something just so intellectual? Not necessarily. It was more so because it's incredible to me. That within the grander context of the series Cosmos, there is a lot of good science inside of it, and a lot of things I do agree with inside of the series. But it is so horribly tainted and intermeshed with evolutionary ideology on a grander scale. When I say on a grander scale, when we're talking natural selection and such, that's not a big deal. Natural selection is, as I've said many times, is scientifically provable. We see natural selection at work. But the theme throughout the series seems to be very evolutionary in nature on a grander scale, in relation to the formation of the universe from an evolutionary perspective. And I had somebody comment to say, well, that's not evolution. No, that's evolution. Evolution means change over time. And the scientific version of evolution per se is something that isn't just regarding the evolution of life, it's the evolution of all things, because frankly, if you do not believe in God, then really the only other viable explanation for how the universe came to existence is through an evolutionary process. Something tiny or non-existent evolved into something existent, which evolved into the universe, which evolved into all of life as we know it over time. It all had to come from somewhere, and like I said, the alternative to the idea of special creation is an evolutionary process. So evolution is more of a philosophy, more of a religion in that regard, and having to unwind that aspect out of the rest of what Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying inside the Cosmos series is just painful to do, and frankly I'd rather not deal with it on a weekly basis, listening to everything that he has to say, paying myself to filter through everything, and then having to comment on everything that he has to say. Much rather not do that. I have to say that he's truly living in a fantasy world, I believe, to think that he's correct on all these different things. I mean, he's got a very structured and organized pattern of thought and a story that he's put together through his evolutionary philosophy, ideology, or religion, whatever you might call it. It's very fascinating to watch on screen, very entertaining to watch, and it makes a lot of sense, quite frankly. But the problem is that it just has a false premise to it, that being a couple of different false premises. One, that there is no God. Two, that the grander theory of evolution is indisputable. Why do they say that this theory is indisputable? There's so much evidence that shows that there's just so many problems with the theory of evolution, so many things that have not been observed. Inside of the media, in smaller articles, you will see many of the ideas of evolution refuted from secular sources. Why are these things ignored? Well, because it wouldn't be conducive for the evolutionary philosophy. Take Eugenie Scott, for instance. I've been going back and watching some of my old videos that feature comments by her. One of them was called Icons of Evolution. It's a fairly old video, and it's done by Focus on the Family, where Eugenie Scott is commenting on Haeckel's embryo drawings, and she acknowledged that the drawings these drawings were used to forward the evolutionary agenda, and she acknowledged that they were flawed, that they were inaccurate. However, should they be removed from textbooks? Not necessarily, because they convey the correct message about evolution and about how evolution takes place. Excuse me, but if it's not valid evidence, then it should be removed from textbooks. It probably has by now. I have no idea. I haven't seen an updated biology textbook since I was in college. So I really couldn't comment as far as whether those are still there. If they are, then shame on the people who write them and publish them. But quite frankly, if if a piece of evidence isn't true, then it shouldn't be used. It's not an isolated incident either. We look at the what I call the parade of primates, where you have the chimpanzee on the left-hand side, and it slowly makes its way through the evolutionary chain until it becomes a human being. This is also acknowledged by, I remember my biology professor of all things, who's a staunch atheist, staunch evolutionist, said that this model is actually, this icon or drawing or whatever is very inaccurate regarding how the theory of evolution is actually perceived in relation to human evolution, that it didn't go from a chimp to an ape in such progressive steps, but that it indeed is a tree, many branches, and that that he would ultimately say that we did not evolve from an ape, but an ape-like creature. So we have these different people that are well versed in their areas of science, that are discrediting the popular images of evolution. But what do? We keep these evolutionary images in the textbooks. We keep these evolutionary images in the mainstream, not because they're accurate, but simply because that it conveys the proper message. Well, that's precisely what Degrasse Tyson is doing here. He's misrepresenting data. He's making it seem as though a dog, quote-unquote, evolving from a wolf, because we know that wolves and dogs are nothing alike whatsoever. That this is evidence of evolution. Now, you look at, physiologically, structurally, and, just about every aspect between dogs and wolves, and they are very similar creatures, and it's very obvious that a dog is nothing more than a variation of a wolf. It is a domesticated wolf, more or less, that we have selectively bred and created different different species, different variations for our own purposes, which Degrasse Tyson does point out in the Cosmos, that indeed is the case. But as I'm going through YouTube and trying to catch up with all these episodes, I'm seeing different things, and one of his things, the Bible is not scientific. Well, okay, in a sense, it's not written as a science textbook. However, when we look at different aspects of it, it is actually very scientifically sound. Just to give you one example right here, I was going through, I was doing a little bit of research the other day. I pull up articles from time to time, just from various sources, and one of the articles that I pulled up was a very fascinating one about Noah's Ark. They haven't found Noah's Ark. I don't anticipate them finding Noah's Ark, not because, as some people would claim it doesn't exist, but think about it. After a couple thousand years, a boat of that size just is not going to be around. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to decay, and I don't even think they kept it put together after it landed and everything. I think it was probably disassembled. Regardless, this article is on the Institute for Creation Research website. It's titled "Students Surprised to Find Noah's Ark Feasible," and this is a university, advanced physics students at, I don't know how to pronounce it, Leicester University. So I think it's Leicester University. They were actually running the biblical dimensions through the scientific method to see if it would be able to house, I think it's 70,000 creatures. Now, mind you, this is kind of an inflated number of how many creatures I believe would have been on the ark, but but they decided to see, could the ark house 70,000 creatures and still be able to float. To make a long story short, after they were finished with all their research, all their testing, they had discovered that it actually could hold 70,000 animals and still remain afloat. To me, that is awesome that they did the research and found that, because just quite frankly, the Bible doesn't have to go through all the science. It's true. I mean, you don't have to defend something that's true. If it's true, it's true, and that's all there really is to it. That's not to say that research shouldn't be done to find out how or why, or the physiological scientific components to, whether it be an organism or say the laws of physics in relation to the art, whatever. I think that these things are very good to do. In fact, we wouldn't have science if it weren't for the sake that people set out to say, hey, I want to learn more about God's creation and how it is He put everything together. So we have this series, The Cosmos, that is a very well done series, but the false premise of it that I don't know specifically to Neil deGrasse Tyson's perspective on God, if he believes in God at all. He probably believes much like Carl Sagan, probably believed in God in respect to God as being the universe, perhaps. Does that make it cognitive or whatever? I just still don't know exactly what he believed in that regard, but probably believes along those lines as Carl Sagan did. And if he's not just a full-blown atheist and just says, okay, why do we even have to use the word God for it? It's not God. So we have him making these assertions and everything, and saying that the Bible isn't true, that probably agreeing with the other atheists and other intelligent design agents as well, that just say, well, it's just not worth it to debate creationists. Well, why is that? Why not debate creationists? I mean, that's actually the suppression of ideas. And I know that people don't have time to just debate everybody that has an objection to their claims. If we did that, we would really be wasting a lot of time. I agree with that. However, I think that when there's a legitimate argument against a claim, that it should be something that's investigated. Quite a few people believe in creationism. I think that it is of a size that it is a significant opposition to the mainstream scientific model. I think it's something that shouldn't be engaged. But instead what we have is evolutionary propaganda being promoted on television, being promoted by other Christians, being promoted by other people of different religious backgrounds. It's a very serious predicament, I think. However, I think that ultimately, if both sides are given an equal form, I truly believe that creationism will win out in that regard, because truth just always conquers lies. And I believe that what Neil deGrasse Tyson is promoting is nothing more than lies. So it's a fascinating series, but when your television series is produced by the voice of Quagmire from Family Guy, I find it kind of hard to take it seriously. And that's not to say that Seth MacFarlane is not an intelligent guy. That's not to say he's not a good guy, but let's face it, at the end of the day, he's still Quagmire from Family Guy. So I think that we really need to put things in perspective. I think that we really need to, objectively and critically take the things that Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying into consideration and determine, is what he's saying indisputable science, or is it based off of some sort of presupposition or religious belief that he has? Can what he say be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt? Again, to kind of conclude this, I would say that there are certain things that he says that I would say are fairly indisputable, but that is so interwoven with what he's saying that it is very disputable. Because of that, for me as a creationist, it's a very difficult series to watch, despite the fact that it is visually stunning and that I would love to be able to enjoy it, but find it practically impossible to be able to do so. Thank you, and God bless everybody. Have a wonderful time watching this video and commenting. I look forward to seeing what everybody has to say. Thank you.